Hi, I'm Glenn Rogers. This is Biblical Insights. The title of our video today is Physical Sight, Spiritual Sight. What do I mean by that? Well, we'll explain that more in the video, but basically what I want to do is talk about one of Jesus' miracles where he healed a blind man, and where the more important concern is not so much that the guy received his physical sight, but that hopefully along the way his spiritual eyes were opened so he could see things and understand things in the spiritual realm that maybe he couldn't before. Now, this is section 51 of our study of Jesus' life and ministry based on the Gospel of Mark. And the text we're going to look at is Mark chapter 10, verses 46 through 50. So we'll be reading, as always, from the Simplified New Testament, which is my translation of the New Testament. So let's begin with Mark chapter 10, verse 46. Jesus and his followers were leaving Jericho. A large crowd was following them, and by the side of the road sat a blind man named Bartimaeus. When he heard that Jesus was passing his way, he called out, "Jesus, have mercy on me." Many people told him to keep quiet, but the more they tried to make him stop, the more he shouted, "Jesus, have mercy on me." Jesus heard him and stopped. "Tell him to come over here," Jesus said. "It is your lucky day," someone said to him. "Jesus wants to see you." Bartimaeus tossed aside his cloak and made his way to Jesus. "What do you want?" Jesus asked him. "To be able to see," he said. "Then go your way," Jesus said. "Your faith has opened your eyes." Immediately, Bartimaeus could see, and he followed Jesus. This is such a simple story, and it the way Mark tells it, it's just kind of a very straightforward thing. Oh, by the way, one day Jesus was walking, and this guy, and then Jesus said, "Okay, you can see," and then he could see, and then this guy became a follower of Jesus. I mean, it's told, in a very simple and straightforward way, and it doesn't make a big deal. In fact, never in the Gospels, when you're reading about the amazing things Jesus did, does the writer, begin talking about how amazing this is and look what he did. They just tell you the story. They just say, "Yeah, guy said I want to see," and Jesus said, "Okay, you have faith, so we'll take care of that for you." And so he could see, and then he became a follower of Jesus. It's just told in a very simple, straightforward manner, and I think that tells us something about the gospel writers and what their methods were and what their motives were and what they were trying to do. They were just telling the story, and then it's up to you to decide what to do with it, right? But this is one of the many miracles that Jesus worked where he healed somebody of a physical problem or challenge. Bartimaeus was blind. Now, we don't know if he was born blind or if there was a sickness that destroyed his eyesight, or maybe there was an accident or something. We don't know how he lost his eyesight, but at this point in his life, he's a grown man, and he can't see. He's lost his eyesight, okay? So he hears that Jesus is coming by, and he calls out, "Jesus, have mercy on me." Now, that tells us how popular Jesus was, and that even though Bartimaeus was sitting alongside the road, begging, presumably, people would give the poor blind man money. So, because he couldn't work, couldn't do a job, couldn't farm, couldn't take care of animals, couldn't do anything. Hard to do any of that stuff if you can't see, right? So he was someone that people gave money to, so he would have a way to support himself. And even though that's basically what he does every day, just sit by the side of the road and ask people for money, he's heard about Jesus, and he's heard about the things Jesus can do, and he wants Jesus to help him as Jesus has helped other people. That's only natural, right? That's what anybody would want. And so when Jesus hears the commotion, even though people are saying, "Be quiet, shh, don't bother him, let him," Bartimaeus wanted Jesus' attention, and he got it. And Jesus says, "Well, bring him over here. Call him over here." And so then it was just a very simple, straightforward thing. What do you want? What do you want me to do for you? And he said, "I want to be able to see." And Jesus says, "Okay, your faith has healed you. Go your way." And the man can see. Very, very simple. Doesn't have to be a big, elaborate thing. Sometimes Jesus does stuff, and other times he just speaks it, and says, "Okay, fine, you can see." And sure enough, the guy could see. And then he became a follower of Jesus. Now, there's a phraseology here that many people misunderstand, and it leads them to some real confusion that causes serious damage and harm to other people because they're teaching something that isn't true. And it's based on this statement, "Your faith has healed you." Okay? And clearly it's the idea that the ultimate reason that Bartimaeus was healed is because he had faith, and he asked Jesus to heal him. He believed Jesus could do it. He asked Jesus to do it. He had the faith, and so Jesus did it. But many people misunderstand that and take that too far, and they believe and they teach that if you have faith, God will heal you. And there are people who have these, healing ministries, and it's all based on, if you have faith, God can and will heal you. Except that's not what the New Testament says. The New Testament never teaches anywhere that if you have faith, God will heal you. And the inverse of that if God doesn't heal you, it's because you don't have enough faith. No. The Bible does not teach that. And they're utilizing a fallacious logical process. In other words, they're trying to build an argument based on what the text says, but it's bad reasoning. That's what fallacious means. It's bad reasoning. It doesn't work. It's not logical. They're trying to be, but it's a failure. Not a good argument. Okay, you can't turn it around and say, therefore, if you're not healed, it's because you don't have faith. God doesn't promise ever, anywhere, to heal everybody who's sick. Jesus did not come here to heal all sick people. He did not come here to feed all hungry people. Okay? He did not come here to solve everybody's problems. He came here to solve one problem, the problem of sin. And he solved that problem by offering himself as a sacrifice on the cross, so that everybody who wanted to be forgiven and saved could be forgiven and saved. That's what he came to do. The healing stuff and all the other miracles he did, whether it was walking on water or calming the storm or raising the dead or giving sight to the blind or hearing to the deaf, whatever he did, those were just things to help people understand the power that he had, to understand that he was God in the flesh and that they should listen to him and do what he said. That's what the purpose of miracles were for. Okay, so he did not come here to, quote, heal people. And if God chooses to heal someone, he probably does it because they have faith. But you can't turn that around and say, and if he doesn't heal you, it's because you don't have faith. Okay, it doesn't work that way. And the Bible doesn't teach that. And if somebody is taught that, and then they don't get healed, then they blame themselves and they feel like, well, I just don't have enough faith. And this is spiritually damaging, and it causes people to be depressed and worried and frightened, and sometimes they get very angry, and sometimes they'll turn away from God because of this false teaching. So just, if you hear somebody teaching that, stay away from them, because it's false teaching. It is not true that if God didn't heal you, it's because you didn't have enough faith. That's not biblical. Okay, now that we've covered those things, okay, I want to get to the part about physical sight, spiritual sight. All right. Physical sight, excuse me. is one of our most important um, uh, features that we have about being human beings, to be able to see. And we learn about our world, and we interact with our world and with other people and everything so much based upon our ability to see. And people who can't see are rather severely handicapped. Now, they still have, other physical systems that they can use. They can hear, usually. They can smell. They can touch. They can taste. They can, the five senses. They still have four other ones most of the time, and so they can still function to a degree, but not as well as they could if their sight was working. So when you lose your sight, you lose a lot. And if you ask most people, if you had to lose one of your five senses, which one of it would you absolutely not want to lose? And most people will say, I would rather not lose my eyesight. If I lost my hearing, I could live with that if I lost it. But they don't want to lose their eyesight. They want to be able to see, because we're very dependent on eyesight. And so this man wanted to be able to see. That's understandable. And so Jesus gave him the gift of sight. But what I want to suggest to you is that as important as physical sight is, the more important sight is spiritual sight. Or maybe we call it insight, spiritual insights, being able to see spiritual things. Now, I'm not talking about looking off in the distance and actually using your physical eyes to see something spiritual. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about understanding. So I'm using seeing something as understanding something. And we use language like that all the time. Somebody explains something to you and go, oh, I see. Okay, I see. What do you mean, I see? It means I understand. Okay, that's what we mean. So when I talk about spiritual sight, right, I'm talking about spiritual insight, spiritual understanding, spiritual wisdom, understanding spiritual things. That's the most important feature, that we can focus on things that have to do with the next life, when we transition out of this physical world and physical life into the next life, the spiritual life, that we understand what that's about. See, that's what we need to be thinking about. We need to be focused on what's coming. We need to be focused on spiritual realities, the fact that God exists, the fact that evil it really exists and good really exists, and there's a conflict and a struggle between good and evil, and Satan exists, and he wants to hurt you, he wants to destroy you, he wants to pull you away from God. But God loves you, and he died for you, and he wants to save you, and he wants to forgive you. And if you'll turn to him and acknowledge your sin and ask for forgiveness, if you're willing to be immersed for the forgiveness of sins, he will forgive you. And he will give you a relationship. He will come to live in you, and he will comfort you and strengthen you and give you insight and wisdom and help you change and grow and become a better person. You see, all of those things are spiritual truths. And seeing them and understanding them and believing them and depending on them, that is much, much more important than physical eyesight. And so, even if you lose your physical sight, you still have the ability to enjoy spiritual sight. You can still see and understand spiritual things. And those are the more important, because they're the more lasting. Everything about us physically one day will end. We're going to get old, we're going to die, and everything about us physically, the ability to see, to hear, to smell, to taste, to touch, to interact, all that, that's all going to be gone. Right? The physical is going to be over and done with. And what's going to remain is the spiritual reality. And that's more important, much more important than anything physical. And so, as important as physical stuff is to us right now, and it's important, okay, it's not as important as the spiritual. And you need to focus on the spiritual. Can you do that? Have you done it in the past? Are you doing it now? Can you do it in the future? Make spiritual truths the focus of your life. The physical stuff will take care of itself. It's not our main priority. Shouldn't be anyway. The spiritual is where we need to be focused. So stay focused on spiritual things. And to help you with that, remember to pray, read your Bible, go to church, and may God bless.